Yudho Aditya. I am the director and co-writer of Pria.
Great. I'm just gonna hit you harder with a very direct question.
Okay.
Why do you do films?
Oh God.
Well, for me, I do films because I think it's the most powerful tool, especially nowadays, to affect and even just for someone to escape. I grew up watching films. It's kind of like my baby. I would sneak into theaters in the Philippines, and it was kind of like my escape from reality. So I think that the effect of like the message of the film affects you as a person. So in return, I want to like service, I guess, youth or people who just want to experience something new through film.
Mine's that too. No, but I think growing up, I grew up in a small, like, island in Indonesia, and not like Bali, not like an island. It's like a port island, so there's nothing there. And I felt like growing up, I was pretty lonely. Like, I felt very lonely. And I think films, at least, you can relate a lot, and I think it's very universal, so you feel less alone, and like I think it validates your experience of being alone too, so you feel less lonely. So I think with films, I think for me at least, like I'm hoping that people watching it also see themselves in it too. So yeah.
All right. So what's Pria about?
Want to take that one?
Oh, okay, yeah. It's about gay teen living in rural Indonesia, and he is struggling between the pressures of his upbringing, or traditions of his upbringing, and his idealization of what the freedom of the West is.
I see. What is the origin of the story? How do you call it, inspired to choose this subject?
You want to take that?
Yeah,
half of that.
I'll take
the
it.
other
Yeah,
half.
sure. And it actually started in Eastern Europe, believe it or not.
Yeah.
We had, so in Colombia, our school, we have to collaborate with other filmmakers, and I found a story that was from the country of Georgia. One of our classmates was from Georgia, wrote this amazing coming of age about this girl who was in an arranged marriage and was about to be, and wanted to kind of have her last fling with her teacher. And I gravitated towards the script, and I wanted a really capable director who's sensitive enough to handle that kind of intimacy. So I worked with Yudho before on previous projects, and I know that he had a sensibility. So in order for us to make it more personal to us, well, we're both Asian, so I wanted to set it in Southeast Asia first of all. But then being that Yudho's from Indonesia, I felt like it was, he should just really make it his own and make it Indonesian. But then also we started, maybe I'll hand it off to you, when we started talking about the protagonist of what his sexual identity is.
No, I think when we first got there, we were going to make the script about the girl in this Muslim country who, is arranged to be married, but then wants something more than just being a housewife. And then when we got there, it felt kind of, outdated. I think we've seen a lot of that before. And right before that, I was at the San Francisco LGBT Film Festival. I was doing a Q&A, and I noticed for the first time in a while, actually, that I'm like the only person that is of Asian descent, or actually any person that's not white in the Q&A. Like, my film was the most diverse, and it only had like one Asian character. The rest of them were pretty like white, and I felt like, I think the LGBT community, I mean, we're also diverse. We're just not all white, but then what's being represented are just white people. Mm-hmm. And I felt like when we got there, I was like, you know what? And I've also been lucky to be able to live in the United States. And I was like, okay, if I were to grow up in this country, I wonder what my life would be like. And I think from that curiosity, we changed it to a gay teen living in rural Indonesia.
That being said, what do you think is the main idea that you're trying to get across to the audience?
Oh God, that's
I mean, for me, as first of all, like as a, I guess as a filmmaker,
Mhm.
in a very broad sense, I feel that there are so many stories. There are so many stories, and then I just, you try to look for the ones that will people have the chance to tell their story if they're from this community, or if they're, like you could be. So we're in America. They're on the other side of the world. First of all, the second of all. The character is gay. Third, the character is Muslim. Then the character is also like in marginalized community, very poor rural Indonesia. So like, there's no way that like their kind of story will come to like to the other side of the world. And I feel like that we were given this opportunity to like tell something that's you don't normally see like every day. I think for me as a creator of content, that's what's very important to me, and I want to keep doing that. And then, of course, you have a more personal approach to
I think
it.
the message for me, first of all, when we got there, like I think there was this idea that, I know for me at least, I felt kind of guilty because it's like, okay, what gives me the right to tell the story? Because I'm okay. I was born there, but I did not live there. I didn't watch the same cartoons as these kids. I did not. The culture is still pretty different.
Where did you live? Sorry.
Where
did you live?
I lived
Yeah.
in Indonesia. So I moved when I was 9 to the U.S.
Okay.
So and then I didn't live it wasn't a completely rural area, but it was a port city that's closer to like Singapore and Malaysia than the rest of Indonesia. So I felt kind of like isolated within the rest of the country, and the country is pretty big.
Yeah.
So it just felt like for a while, it feels kind of weird being there because like there are way more qualified like Indonesian filmmakers that could have told the story. So then for us, like if we wanted to do it right, we have to like really do it right. So I think when I got there, I decided I'm gonna stay here. Like I moved from here to there, and like research the story. And I think the film then ended up being about, I think, identity and questioning whether or not, or how can you be Indonesian, Muslim, and gay at the same time, and what does that look like? And I think Pria means man in in Indonesian, and I think there's this idea of being a man, what it means, and I think the idea is always like, this masculine person who like, is macho, but like, I think being a man means like, like sacrificing a lot of things, and it doesn't matter if you're feminine or like however you look like, being a man is like sticking to your responsibility and to your community, and I think that's ended up being what the film is about.
Oh, okay.
In a very general sense too, it's also about family really, because especially in like the Asian cultures, like family is a very strong like thing that we try to keep these relationships in our families, that there's again like you said, there's a lot of sacrifice involved when it comes to like dishing out your own freedoms in order to make a certain community happy or a certain family member happy. So I think it's also essential.
And I think it's
family.
funny that what I learned talking to a lot of people there is that like how Western my opinions are, because here we believe like the individual, like your personal freedom or whatever, but you don't realize, and there's no right or wrong viewpoint really. So you don't realize like on the other side of the world, like particularly in a place like Indonesia, community and family is the number one most important thing.
Yeah.
Like you focus on that more than the individual, and I think people forget. People think like like he can't be himself. He can't be like gay and happy and free, and that means he's not happy, and that's not really true, because I think what he finds important at least is that his family comes first more than himself. So.
How long did it take from the Georgia moment?
It's a long time.
The moment of.
I think it was written. 8 to 12 was 2004.
So we decided December 2015.
but then 14.
Oh no.
No, 14. No, it is 2014. But then they wrote it, like the original Georgian script was written in 2013, like December 2013.
Oh.
So it was just like in circulation for a while. Then Valerie acquired the rights to it in like November, December.
Yeah.
and then we
November.
decided to move it to Indonesia in around December 2000.
And then we took our first trip together to Scout in June.
Yeah, of 2015.
Wow.
And then I
And we had to raise money.
Yeah, and
Which
then
was hard.
I ended up staying there from 2015 of June until January 2016 after we had shot.
Yeah.
Okay. Given all of this, what's the best and the worst part about being a filmmaker?
What should we talk about?
I mean, the best part for me is, for me as a producer, is having a challenge every day, and it's always different, but you love it. You know, like it's hard, but you love it. I don't hate myself. I'm not like stuck in a desk, kind of banging my head against the wall. You know, like I'm actually happy to be doing. Even if you pay me, even if you don't, it's better if you pay me. But if not, like it's fine because I'm doing what I love. I guess that's the best part. And the worst part for me is probably in particular to Pria, is there are certain things that I feel like I question myself sometimes there are sacrifices that I have to do in order to tell my story. So sometimes I feel like, am I exploiting certain people? Am I taking advantage of, telling someone, oh, we're gonna film you, and like, is that gonna affect them somehow in a negative way later on? So there are like
it's such a sensitive, and it's such a sensitive subject.
There are unconscious things that you're not really sure, like if being part of that film will affect them negatively. So that's a risk that we just had to take, and sometimes because you take those risks, it gets in your head sometimes. Yeah.
My best part, I don't know, there's a lot of pros. I think, at least in this particular project, like I learned so much about like just different things that I would not normally have learned. Like I don't know, God, it's hard. I know the thing is, like there are a lot of pros in this experience, I think. And I think for me, I grew a lot as just not a filmmaker, but as like a human being. I think I have more empathy for a lot of people now than I had before. So that's always a plus.
Yeah.
I think being able to do film and being able to tell stories, like you're bound to have all empathy and understanding, and I think that's really nice.
Great.
The con, it was tough. Indonesia was tough. It was tough.
Yeah.
Like
It rained a lot on our set.
it was. I mean, the thing is like we.
Great.
No, yeah. The thing is like we
Yeah.
prepped for like
The
like
rain.
months, and we only had 4 days to shoot this thing, which
Yeah.
was insane.
Yeah,
Because
4 days.
Okay.
like
And then there was that bombing thing that happened in Jakarta. Like after 10 years, they never had like a terrorist attack, and then all of a sudden during our shoot, it happened.
Yeah, and a
we're
lot of
like,
the
"What?"
the cast and crew were affected by it too. So like
Yeah.
it was that, and also it was raining literally every single day.
Yeah.
We were like in a village, like I don't know, like proper village. So like nothing really was paved. There was like one paved road, but everything else
Everything
was
was
like muddy. So it was a tough like shooting environment. So that was hard.
Yeah.
Okay. Coming back a little bit to New York.
Okay.
Why did I write here? How do you think that living and studying in New York has influenced your life and your work?
It's great. New York City has always been my kind of like, because I see it in the movies and you dream about it and you're like, oh, this is amazing. And then now that we're actually like walking these streets and like going to school here, it only like, it doesn't bring it to a reality. You're still like, oh, I'm still living the dream. Like, it's great. But also it's the mixture of people. It's probably the most culturally diverse city in the world, probably, right? Could be. Like, I could just be sitting in the subway.
America.
Yeah, I could just be sitting in the subway and just being completely entertained by what's going on around me. There's lots of inspiration around as a storyteller. You meet people every day who have like coming from all over the world and with different stories. So I think as a filmmaker, it only enriches your experience to share, different things. So I think it's great.
Yeah.
I don't know about this guy.
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't want to burst anyone's bubble about New York. I mean, of course, I think with any place there are pros and cons. I think the pros for sure, at least within our program, like our school, like I think it's like 60-70% like international, and I think that's exciting and great. And I like learning about different people and different things, so like I love that aspect. But I think with any big city, it does get pretty, it's hard. Like you're living here by yourself, like my family isn't here, like when I got here I didn't have any friends. So it gets lonely, and I think that's like personally that's a con. But I think I feel very privileged to be here.
Yeah.
Not a lot of people get to live and study in New York. So
Yeah.
aside from that, like I think, I don't know, it's such a vibrant and intoxicating place to be in. So
Yeah.
you're always like stimulated all the time.
Yeah, but I'm sure you also miss the time when you just want to go off to like a greener area and just like with no people and just have a moment of meditation somewhere, because this is not the place for that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, we're
Yeah.
getting closer to the end.
Okay. No, we're having fun.
Okay.
We can keep going.
What's the number one question on your mind these days?
Oh God.
What is the meaning of life?
Still so.
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, for me, I think it's because of what's happening in the recent political events, of which I'm normally not a super political person, but it's kind of scary because it's not just happening in the U.S., it's happening all over the world. And I really don't know what it is that's affecting this like kind of like shift. And I know history is maybe repeating itself. I don't know what's happening, but I think I can only do so much like as a filmmaker to kind of either reflect this darkness. I guess I want to call it darkness because for me it's very bleak. So my number one question is, what is happening to humanity? I know that's so deep and philosophical, but like, what is happening and how are we going to survive it? I guess I know that's super deep, right?
No, I think that for sure makes sense. Like especially with the climate right now, and I think for me as a filmmaker, it's always been ever since I started. It's like, how can I make things better?
Yeah.
Like simply like with everything I do, like. We have a responsibility as a filmmaker. Again, we're in a very, very privileged place, and positioned to tell stories that are not really told, and I think expand people's viewpoints so they can understand more. And I think that would help a little bit at least.
Yeah, because I think at the end of the day, we're both kind of like optimists that we believe in like the goodness of people. So when things like this happen in a political climate, it makes us question like the complexity of humanity, of like are we in the minority of being like trying to do good, or is there really like a more selfish and aspect of being a human being that we're trying to like deal with it when we write or film our stories? So it's very complex.